It's 1 minute to midnight on that doomsday clock, and we need to act now.
A crucial UN conference on climate change opened in Glasgow, Scotland on Monday, with world leaders, environmental experts, and activists pleading for decisive action to halt global warming, which threatens the future of the planet. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson told the crowd at the COP26 summit that time is running out.
If we don't get serious about climate change today, it will be too late for our children to do so tomorrow.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said the world's addiction to fossil fuels is pushing humanity to the brink.
Enough of treating nature like a toilet. We are digging our own graves.
And U.S. President Joe Biden, despite appearing to nod off for a moment in the audience and arriving without securing a key piece of climate legislation he has been pushing, robustly assured the world that the U.S. would keep its promise to slash greenhouse gas emissions by more than half by the end of the decade.
We'll demonstrate to the world the United States is not only back at the table, but hopefully leading by the power of our example.
COP26 aims to keep alive a target of capping global warming at 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit, or 1.5 degrees Celsius, above pre-industrial levels, the limit scientists say would avoid its most destructive consequences. To do that, it needs to secure more ambitious pledges to reduce emissions, lock in billions in climate financing for developing countries, and finish the rules for implementing the 2015 Paris Agreement. But in Rome over the weekend, a meeting of the G20 failed to commit to the 2050 target to halt net carbon emissions, undermining one of COP26's main goals. And outside the summit, 18-year-old climate activist Greta Thunberg said the powerful leaders were just, quote, pretending to take the future of the planet seriously.
Change is not going to come from inside there. That is not leadership. This is leadership. Yeah! This is what leadership looks like.
Mona Al-Khourais is aiming to change attitudes in Saudi Arabia. She's turned her passion for shooting, once a male-dominated field, into a profession by teaching it. And an increasing number of women are joining her classes. In order to become a licensed firearms trainer, Khourais had to get training in Saudi and abroad. She now teaches here at the Top Gun firing range in Riyadh.
My passion for guns and shooting began when I was a child, by going with my father on hunting trips. I started officially 5 years ago as part of training inside and outside the kingdom with both Saudi and non-Saudi coaches.
Khourais says the pivotal point in her career came this year after the government allowed women to own weapons. Attitudes towards women have been changing in the conservative kingdom, with women making steady gains in the workforce by taking up jobs in a range of professions. Khourais, however, initially faced problems working in a male-dominated environment.
The difficulties that I faced were criticisms from women, which was surprising to me, as I was expecting men to oppose it more than women. I think the reason behind the criticism was because it's odd for them that a woman was joining the field of guns and men, which is unlike the women's nature. But thank God I was determined and secured qualifications from the Saudi Shooting Federation and the IPSC organization. Now, as you can see, most of the visitors at the shooting range are mostly women.
As more girls and women learn to handle guns, Khourais hopes their attitudes will change and that she can inspire them. Her goal, she says, is to form a team and participate in the Olympics.
A vast pile of rubble is what remains after a high-rise building under construction in Nigeria's commercial capital Lagos collapsed on Monday. And fears are growing for the workers trapped inside. Several are missing. 2 construction employees at the site in the affluent Ikoyi neighborhood said possibly 100 were working when the building crashed down.
As I came, I see some of the pillars cracking, and they are chiseling it.
Construction worker Eric Ntete said he just got out in time.
We just reached the end of this building. The people collapsed at once.
Building collapses are frequent in Nigeria, where regulations are poorly enforced and construction materials often substandard. It was not immediately clear what caused the collapse. The Lagos State Emergency Management Agency said heavy-duty and life detection equipment had been dispatched and that first responders were at the scene.
Oh yay, oh yay, oh yay.
The U.S. Supreme Court on Monday heard oral arguments in two separate challenges to the Texas abortion law that imposes a near-total ban on the procedure, and the justices appeared to lean toward allowing one challenge brought by abortion providers, jumping on the law's unusual design that lets private citizens enforce it, shielding it from being blocked by lower courts.
The entire point of this law, its purpose and its effect, is to find the chink in the armor.
Some of the most pointed questions came from liberal Justice Elena Kagan, who said the Texas abortion law was intended to evade a basic legal principle.
The fact that after, these many years, some geniuses came up with a way to evade the commands of that decision, as well as the command that the even broader principle that states are not to nullify federal constitutional rights. And to say, we've never seen this before, so we can't do anything about it. I guess I just don't understand the argument.
At issue in the challenge brought by abortion providers is not the Texas law's constitutionality, but whether federal courts can hear lawsuits aimed at striking down the law, which was structured so that instead of having state officials enforce the ban on abortions after about 6 weeks of pregnancy, the law lets individual citizens enforce it through lawsuits against providers. The Supreme Court declined to halt the Texas abortion law in September, with 5 of the court's 6 conservative justices in the majority, but there were signs on Monday that some of those 5 conservative justices were reconsidering their positions, including Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who appeared to express interest in points made by Justice Kagan.
Justice Kagan points out there's a loophole that's been exploited here.
Kavanaugh also wondered if states could pass similar laws that could infringe other constitutional rights, including the right to bear arms.
And to put huge penalties to the Chief Justice's hypothetical, say everyone who sells an AR-15 is liable for $1 million to any citizen.
The justices also heard a challenge to the law by the Biden administration, but weren't as receptive, appearing skeptical about whether the U.S. federal government can sue Texas to try to block it. A decision on the Texas abortion law could come quickly. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court will address the constitutionality of abortion restrictions more directly when they hear arguments on December 1st over the legality of a Mississippi law that prohibits abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy.
All eyes are on the Virginia governor's race as the candidates reach Election Day in a near-dead heat. Republican Glenn Youngkin is within striking distance of Democrat Terry McAuliffe in an election that will test a strategy of trying to woo suburban moderates without alienating the hardliners who backed Donald Trump. Youngkin's campaign focused on rallying parents angry about the way schools have handled COVID-19 and racism in the classroom.
Day one, I will ban critical race theory from being in our schools.
Youngkin, a former private equity executive, has tried to walk a fine line on former President Trump's false claims that his election defeat in 2020 was the result of fraud. His opponent, former Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, has painted a cozy relationship between Youngkin and the former president.
He has been endorsed by Trump now 9 times. Trump wants to win here so he can announce for president for 2024. That's the stakes of this election.
If Youngkin wins on Tuesday, his approach may serve as a model for Republicans around the country looking to unseat Democrats in next year's congressional elections. If McAuliffe wins, he would retake the seat he held from 2014 through 2018. The state's laws forbid governors from serving consecutive terms. President Joe Biden and former President Barack Obama visited the state to campaign for McAuliffe in its final weeks. Virginia has elected just one Republican governor in the last 2 decades, and Democrats currently also control both houses of the state legislature.